Hello, and welcome to today's session on the hierarchy of controls. This model is used across Australian industries to manage workplace WHS risks, following a systematic approach to reducing or eliminating hazards. Whether you're working in mining, construction, healthcare, or manufacturing, understanding the hierarchy of controls is key to maintaining a safe workplace. In Australia, workplace health and safety is guided by national standards, including the Work Health and Safety Act, WHS, which promotes this hierarchy to protect workers from harm. The hierarchy of controls is structured from the most effective to the least effective methods for controlling workplace hazards. There are 6 levels in this hierarchy: elimination, substitution, isolation, engineering controls, administrative controls, personal protective equipment, PPE. Let's break down each level and provide practical examples of how they apply in Australian workplaces. The most effective control measure involves eliminating the hazard and associated risk. The best way to do this is by firstly, not introducing the hazard into the workplace. For example, you can eliminate the risk of a fall from height by doing the work at ground level. Eliminating hazards is often cheaper and more practical to achieve at the design or planning stage of a product, process, or place used for work. In these early phases, there is greater scope to design out hazards or incorporate risk control measures that are compatible with the original design and functional requirements. For example, not using a noisy machine will be more effective than providing workers with personal hearing protectors. You can also eliminate risks by removing an existing hazard. For example, by removing trip hazards on the floor, disposing of unwanted chemicals, or not working in an isolated or remote area. It may not be reasonably practicable to eliminate a hazard if doing so means that you cannot make the end product or deliver the service. If you cannot eliminate the hazard, then you must minimize as many of the risks associated with the hazard as reasonably practicable. Substitution involves replacing something hazardous with a safer alternative. For instance, using water-based paints instead of solvent-based paints, which contain toxic chemicals, is an example of substitution commonly used in Australian construction or manufacturing sectors. Another example would be using battery-operated tools instead of corded tools to reduce the risk of electrical hazards. Isolation involves separating people from the hazard. This can be done by physically distancing workers from dangerous equipment or processes. For example, in mining, heavy machinery is often enclosed in designated areas, preventing workers from coming into direct contact with them. Another example is placing barriers or fencing around hazardous work zones to keep people away from danger. Engineering controls focus on designing physical changes to the work environment that reduce risk. For example, installing guards on machinery or introducing ventilation systems to remove toxic fumes in industrial settings are common engineering controls. A practical example in construction might be using scaffolding with guardrails to reduce the risk of falls. Administrative controls involve developing processes or policies to manage risk. This could include job rotation to reduce worker exposure to harmful substances, regular safety training, or implementing procedures like sign-ins to monitor access to hazardous areas. While these don't remove the hazard, they help workers manage it more effectively. For example, setting strict safety protocols for handling chemicals and requiring workers to undergo regular training on those protocols is an administrative control. Any remaining risks must be minimized with suitable PPE. Examples of PPE include earmuffs, respirators, face masks, hard hats, gloves, aprons, and protective eyewear. PPE limits exposure to the harmful effects of a hazard, but only if workers wear and use the PPE correctly. Personal protective equipment, or PPE, is the least effective control because it relies on individuals using equipment correctly. In conclusion, the hierarchy of controls provides a structured way to manage workplace hazards by prioritizing the most effective controls, starting with elimination and substitution and working down to PPE. By applying this hierarchy, we can create safer work environments and meet the standards of the WHS Act. Remember, always aim to implement the highest level of control possible. Thank you for your attention today, and let's work together to keep our workplaces safe.